Good evening, everyone. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. We had close to 200 folks register for this evening's event from across the country, and I'm so thrilled to be with all of you for our second edition of Cal for All, Fostering Diversity in Sustainable Leadership. Cal for All is a collaboration between the Cal Alumni Association, our Cal Alumni chapters, our campus partners, and the members of our Cal Alumni community. My name is Susie Cohen-Crumpler, she, her, and I am the Executive Director of the Cal Alumni Association. Our Cal for All series is aimed at creating a more inclusive alumni community. We bring together Cal alumni from diverse backgrounds to discuss diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice, DEIBJ. And through our Cal for All series, we hope to broaden our outreach to engage more segments of the Cal alumni community. We want to provide a platform to share diverse perspectives on a variety of topics and to highlight the impact of our alumni chapters, our campus colleagues, and our alumni community partnerships. So to our speakers, our panelists, our facilitators, and to all of you, all of our guests joining this evening from across the country for our second installment of Cal for All, I welcome you to this space with a big Go Bears, and I am so grateful to be here with all of you this evening. I look forward to the upcoming discussion. I look forward to listening, to learning, and to growing. It's now my pleasure to introduce you to the president of the Cal Alumni Association's Board of Directors, Kirk Tramble. Kirk brings over 20 years of corporate experience to CAA's board. Hello, Kirk. He earned his Bachelor's of Science degree in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, EECS, from Berkeley in 1993 and an MBA from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. In his professional life, Kirk has gained extensive experience working at Chevron, Oracle, Microsoft, Apple, Nitro Inc., and most recently, Kazata LLC. Kirk is a wonderful Cal alum. He's super passionate about sharing Cal's many resources and events with other alumni, and he also serves as a key member of the Black Engineering and Science Club, BSAC. Welcome, Kirk, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Susie, for the wonderful introduction. I'm Kirk Tramble, class of '93. Serving as president of the Cal Alumni Association's board. It's a privilege to lead and make a difference in our alumni community. As president, I've aimed to positively impact the CAA and our global alumni network. The Cal for All speaker series is central to our mission of fostering inclusivity and dialogue on diversity, equity, and justice. Our efforts, including supporting clubs like the Black Engineering and Science Alumni Club, highlight the importance of diverse leadership and inclusive environments. In 2021, BSAC, the Black Engineering and Science Alumni Club, received the Berkeley Award for Outstanding Volunteer Club. A special welcome to friends Regent John Perez and panelists Ousman Jobe. Thank you to all our guests for joining this promising event. I look forward to the discussions ahead. Let's continue to make Cal a place for all. I'll now pass the stage to JoJo for our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Kirk. And thank you everyone for joining. We want to start off by acknowledging the land that we reside on, We recognize that Berkeley sits on the territory of the Huchun, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the historic and sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and other familial descendants of the Verona Band. We recognize that every member of the Berkeley community has benefited and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1868. Consistent with our values of community and diversity, we have a responsibility to acknowledge and make visible the university's relationship to Native peoples. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous sovereignty and will work to hold the University of California, Berkeley more accountable to the needs of American Indian and Indigenous people.
So now as we transition to the next part of our programming today, it's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panel moderator, Ché Abram. With a passion for diversity, equity, inclusion, Ché brings a wealth of experience in facilitating meaningful conversation that drive impactful change. An Oakland, California native with over 20 years of experience in higher education, Ché currently serves as the Chief DI Officer for UC Berkeley School of Public Health. In her current leadership role, Ché leads the school's anti-racism, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice work. She cultivates restorative environments that promote healing from adversity and foster communities centered in accountability. She develops race and equity frameworks and programming and practices that strengthen relationship with the self, community, and our environment. Her work is centered in knowledge, empathy, practice, vision, and holistic wellness. Ché's commitment to these areas has garnered over 20 million in grant and private funding opportunity. She also has received the UC Berkeley Chancellor's Outstanding Staff Award in 2023 for her commitment to inclusive excellence for all members of the School of Public Health. Personally, she's a mother who thrives on things that encourage laughter, and her most sacred self-care practice is spending time in nature, especially near water. Please join me in welcoming Ché Abram as our panel moderator for today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I really appreciate that. And I have the honor of introducing our panelists. Dr. Allison Scott is the CEO of the Kapor Foundation, which focuses at the intersection of racial justice and technology and works to remove barriers in access and opportunity such that the promise and potential of technology can be harnessed to create a more equitable future. Under her leadership, the foundation works to expand equity in K-12 computer science education and increase diversity within tech companies and venture capitalist firms, advance equitable tech policy to transform the technology ecosystem. The foundation's strategies include producing research, deploying strategic grants, supporting policy advocacy, and investing in tech entrepreneurs and venture funds. Dr. Scott is currently a principal investigator on multiple national grants to extend equity in computer science education, and her previous role as the Chief Research Officer authored foundational research on inequity in CS education and disparities in the tech sector. Previous positions include Chief Research Officer at the Kapor Center, Program Leader for the National Institutes of Health's Enhancing the Diversity of Biomedical Workforce Initiative, Director of Research and Evaluation for the Level Playing Field Institute, and Data Analysis for the Education Trust West. Dr. Scott holds a PhD from 2013 in Education from the University of California, Berkeley, and a bachelor's degree in Psychology from Hampton University. Dr. Scott shared that she had a wonderful experience in UC Berkeley's PhD program and benefited greatly from the interdisciplinary studies and social justice approaches. Next is Deborah Cheng, or Debbie. Dr. Debbie Cheng is the Director of Fellowships and Office of Student Success at the Colin Powell School for Civic and Global Leadership, which is the social sciences division of the City College of New York and home to many of its leadership programs. She oversees a broad range of co-curricular opportunities that provide students many of whom are first in their families to go to college, with peer and professional mentors, paid internships, and fellowships. This includes the Climate Policy Fellows Program, a year-long fellowship that brings together students from engineering, the social sciences, the physical sciences, and architecture, providing them with climate-related internships and other professional opportunities. Debbie received her PhD in 2009 from UC Berkeley's Energy and Resources Group, where her research focused on access to water and water privatization in her hometown of Manila, Philippines. Debbie shared with us that Berkeley's work and reach opened doors for her to subsequent social sciences and civic leadership roles, and she also enjoyed and benefited from the interdisciplinary studies and civic leadership lenses to move her beyond her environmental engineering background. And lastly, we have Ousman Jobe. Ousman leads global partnerships for Microsoft's Airband initiative. He has 20 years and more of experience in advising C-level executives, inspiring cross-functional teams, and driving organizational strategy in fast-paced environments. His mission is to leverage his domain expertise in technology policy, complex sales, and new business development to create positive social and economic change for individuals and organizations. In his previous work at Meta and LinkedIn, he led company-wide efforts to mitigate election and geopolitical risk in sub-Saharan Africa, developed and advanced future work priorities, and generated incremental investment from strategic accounts. He also evangelized the power of social media through public speaking engagements and thought leadership. He is a global servant, seeks to partner with visionary leaders who share his passion for impact. He holds an MBA in marketing and finance from Northwestern University and a Bachelor of Arts in Economics from UC Berkeley, class of '95. And he shared that one of the things he learned most is key valuable leadership and entrepreneurship skills at UC Berkeley, doing more with less, that representation matters, and more that he'll share with us during our time together. And I just want to start by asking the panel this wonderful question. What about the topic of our conversation tonight inspired you to agree to be a panelist for this session? And I'll ask Dr. Allison Scott to respond first. Dr. Scott, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you guys for the thumbs up. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. Really excited about the conversation. As you read in my bio, but also isn't necessarily clear just on reading bios. I'm incredibly passionate about racial equity work. And as we've talked about a little bit in the previous conversation, and as is top of mind for probably most who have joined this webinar, I just think it's incredibly important for us to be having this conversation at this moment in time. And obviously, as a Berkeley alum, when Berkeley calls, I answer the phone. So happy to be here.
And Ousman, can you respond as well?
I'll +1 to when Berkeley calls, you have to say yes. There's no question about that. I got so much out of that school. And I distinctly remember that when I got to Cal, I didn't fit into any box at Cal. I was African, I was Black, I was international, I was an immigrant, but the one that mattered the most was I was broke. So being able to really connect with people who are allies, understanding how to navigate what this world looked like when I wasn't part of the majority would always stick with me. So I think that being able to give back is something that matters at Cal and something that I really look forward to. And this was a simple opportunity to share what I learned and what did work and what didn't work. So definitely look forward to this conversation.
Debbie.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much to the Cal Alumni Association for inviting me to join tonight. It's such an honor to be with this distinguished panel of alumni, and +1 for when Berkeley calls, I will be there. You know, just to give a little bit more background on the work that I do, Ché, you already described it a little bit, but I'm the Director of Fellowships in the Office of Student Success at the Colin Powell School for Civic and Global Leadership. So this is the Social Sciences Division at the City College of New York. And City College is part of the CUNY system, the City University of New York, which is the largest urban public university system in the country, and an engine of social mobility for our students. So our students are 80% people of color, they're half immigrants and the first in their families to go to college. They're mostly from low-income neighborhoods. And what we do at the Colin Powell School is we combine the social sciences with a commitment to leadership development and social justice. So we serve those in our society who come from communities that lack power, and we try to empower them in order to position them to be the next generation of leaders in service to society. And I think that so much of my what I learned at Berkeley has prepared me for this role, even though it was sort of a nonlinear journey. I grew so much as a person at Berkeley, and this is what I infuse into my work. So the fellowships that I oversee are for students who are committed to tackling the most pressing issues, from climate change to racial justice to LGBTQ rights to the migrant crisis. And I was really excited to join this panel and think about ways in which we can create more opportunities for people who are just like our students to shift power and to transform society.
Thank you all for your responses. Our next question is, how have diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives prepares you for your career progression, either locally, nationally, or globally? And we'll start with Debbie.
Thank you, Ché. So you mentioned that I grew up in Manila in the Philippines, and that has probably been the single most important impact on my interests and career path. From a young age, I was exposed to issues around poverty and inequality and environmental degradation, and I've always felt an urgency to work on these issues of pressing public concern. So I spent the first half of my education and career working on environmental issues, first as an engineer, but then I quickly decided that I didn't want to do that. And so that's what drew me to Berkeley, and specifically to the Energy and Resources Group, which is an small interdisciplinary program where I started taking classes in geography and urban studies and sociology. And it introduced me to these ways of thinking about environmental issues from more critical and what I think is more interesting perspective. So for my PhD research, I went back to Manila, my hometown, where there was a massive water privatization project, and I examined the impact of this project on lower income communities. And so now, while I've shifted to the higher education space, the same kinds of questions and challenges that drew me to environmental work draw me to higher education issues. I'm interested in addressing inequality and increasing access. And I think, again, this goes back to my childhood in Manila, but also what I learned at Berkeley, the ways I could think about these issues, and all of the DEIBJ initiatives that I've seen or been a part of along the way.
Ousman, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a great question, and one that speaks to me personally. I think I've benefited from DEIBJ opportunities multiple times, and a couple examples I wanted to share. One was my first experience when I was at Cal. We all had to deal with a summer internship, and going back to being broke, for me, it was really trying to figure out where could I get the best opportunity to learn and to grow. And there's a program called Inroads that I was the beneficiary of joining, and allowed me to intern at Fortune 500 companies like Bank of America, develop skills to interview, network, and even learn business dinner etiquette. Simple things that can either get you ahead or not get you ahead. I think I leveraged the confidence that I gained from Inroads to grad school, where one of my passions, similar to what Debbie said, being from Manila, I'm from the smallest country in Africa, the Gambia. And this accent has been with me ever since I was 10 years old in Senegal. But when I got to Cal, I realized very quickly I was not quite from here, right? So being able to leverage my passion for Africa and how do I build bridges between Africa, the United States, and technology has been key. So using the ability, again, to think about what lens to look at allowed me to lead one of the first global classes at Northwestern to bring 30 people to Ghana for the very first time. And we had to convince 30 out of 600 students to go to make the cut, and we were able to do it. And that career experience was transformative. The last example I'll share is really around even when you have been out for a long time, we talk about careers not being linear. The ability to participate in high potential programs has made a huge difference for me. And it's there, for example, when I was at LinkedIn, that I learned the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. I had a lot of mentors in my career. I hadn't had a lot of sponsors, people who would knock down doors. And when I was not in the room, continued to build and advocate for me. And that's what led me to public policy, managing geopolitical risks, and now managing global partnerships for Microsoft. So just kudos again to these initiatives, because without them, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today.
And Allison, what are your thoughts?
Thank you so much. So hard to follow these two amazing speakers. So very similarly, I was super grateful to have the experience, but at my from my time both at Hampton University, which is a historically Black college, and then at UC Berkeley, two very different, obviously, academic institutions, but both had a through line around their commitment to racial equity and justice. This also was a helpful reflection in terms of how have you benefited from programs. As Ousman said, there's no way I would be here without having the benefit of programs starting all the way back at Hampton. I was funded to do summer research under a program sponsored by the NIH focused on increasing diversity in social science research careers. So that was like my first taste of research as I believe a sophomore in college with no clue what I wanted to do with my life after graduation. And that like literally set me on the path to a PhD program. And then, as I mentioned previously, when I got to UC Berkeley, being able to take courses, so I was in the School of Education, but I was able to take courses in African American Studies, in public health, in history. The education focus was also very, it was very clearly focused on understanding systems of inequality. And I knew I would get that experience at Berkeley, which is part of the reason I chose Berkeley. But it was very much like a part of the way in which we were prepared. And then I also had to reflect, now I wouldn't have come to UC Berkeley if I didn't have a fellowship, that going back to being broke, Ousman. And the fellowship, paid for me to go to school as well as like living expenses. And so that was like incredibly important as someone who had to make a decision about, do I go to grad school or do I start my career? And then one thing that I also had to reflect on was the importance of having faculty mentors that were African American. So two of my mentors were African American. They held deep personal knowledge on issues of race, racism, and critical race theory in addition to their research. So I had all of these factors like shaping my experiences. And then the experience of being on campus with people from all different diverse backgrounds provided like a bigger perspective of the challenges facing our globe. So not even just thinking about the challenges in Berkeley, in Oakland, in California, but across the world. And then one point that I just wanted to make before I close, unfortunately, when I started my graduate program, UC Berkeley's African American student body had dropped to one of its lowest points. I believe it was either 2% or 3%. And the lack of representation had a really significant impact both on myself, but also how I was looking at the space of education and inequality in education. So it deeply concerned me, but it also contributed to my passion to address systemic educational inequality. And I have to point out that Berkeley has done a much better job through lots and lots of efforts that many folks on this call have contributed to.
Thank you for that. These are all great responses. And I will follow up with a few things later. But thinking back to 2020 and 2021, when a significant number of cities around the world sheltered in place and we lived dramatically different lives, has your definition of sustainable impact shifted from then to now? And I would like a response from all of you, just because you all are in drastically different spaces. And I would love to hear your lens on that. So Ousman, we'll start with you.
Sure, that's a great question. If I can think about where I was between 2021, stuck with COVID, stuck at home, and all of a sudden that internet connection became gold, right? What also became very clear for me was that there were those of us who were lucky enough to be able to work from home, get on a computer and have access, and there were many of us who could not. And that divide, to me, has just gotten bigger. To me, sustainable means that people have the tools, people have the skills and the resources to be successful and productive. And what that showed me that there are many, many people who could benefit from more access, not less access to technology. But the other thing is that even if people do have access, how do you operate safely in a world that you don't know? How do you operate safely in a world that may be foreign to you? I think when I first started in tech, my eyes were very rose colored in terms of like there's economic opportunity for everybody, and that's what the world would absolutely take. I think the last couple of years have taught me that for this to be sustainable, we need to be sober. We need to be sober about the risks. We need to be sober about the opportunities that are being presented. And then diverse perspectives matter, right? We can't be blinded by our own biases, by our own blind spots. And now more than ever, the ability to have multiple different voices for input matter, whether it's civil society, nonprofits, academia, corporations, and more. But to me, it's the all of us and all of society is the solution, less than anything, more than any other time in life for me.
Debbie, for you, your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Ché. So I was in New York City during the pandemic, which you might remember was one of the epicenters of COVID in the US. So while I was, very fortunate to shelter in place, there were huge disparities across the city. Many minority communities included frontline workers, delivery workers. They were more crowded. They had higher rates of comorbidities and higher rates of death. And so, many of our students' families and communities were impacted by COVID. They live in these communities, and their families work as frontline delivery workers. And so right after the pandemic started, one of the things that we did at the Colin Powell School was we launched an emergency grant program. And we found that giving grants of $2,000 made a huge difference for students and their families. It was like it mattered their ability to pay rent and to just survive. So that was a huge a program that had a huge impact, sort of by accident, but that was a lucky, fortuitous thing. And then the summer of 2020 also saw the murder of George Floyd, and that prompted us to launch our Racial Justice Fellows program, which it enables students to learn about and work on these issues through paid internships. So it was clear, here in New York and elsewhere, that the pandemic really exacerbated inequalities in income and race and access to healthcare and job opportunities, et cetera. And so I think what we learned was, for our students, it's even more important to give them opportunities, whether that's grants or internships or other things that provide them with professional development and a career path that enables social mobility. And so that's what we try to do at the school.
Thank you. Those are very innovative and great ideas. Allison.
Sorry, the process of coming off mute. So some similar thread to what has previously been mentioned. I think for me, I similarly was grateful enough to be able to shelter in place, but I think what was very obvious for a lot of us in this doing work in the space was that it put racial disparities under immediate spotlight. So things that Debbie already mentioned, from the lack of access to Wi-Fi, needed to do remote learning, to disproportionate impact on jobs and health outcomes for communities of color. In the tech space specifically, like we just saw how, like, not only are, this is broadly speaking, not only are those like really like cushy jobs, but then those folks also got to stay at home while bringing in their salary, while, lower income workers had to do all of the dirty work. So it was very like eye-opening. And I think at the time, upon reflection of like this idea of sustainable impact, there was a lot of talk, if you all remember, about like what this moment would mean, how we would emerge from the pandemic as a better society, opportunities to shake up old and ineffective systems. So like one example that I like to remind folks of, do you remember, like the first 2 weeks or so of virtual learning, everyone who had kids was saying we would pay teachers hundreds of thousands of dollars. We understand how important this work is, how hard this work is. And what's interesting is like, where are we about like translating that into sustainable impact? Like, where are conversations now about dramatically increasing teacher pay, which has been an ongoing challenge and one like massive contributor of education inequality. And then definitely appreciate Debbie mentioning the racial reckoning unlike many of us had ever seen before, which also led to like large commitments, lots and lots and lots of what seemed at the time like a lot of energy around like this is going to change, like this is a moment in time that's going to forever change the trajectory of our country. Unfortunately, what we're seeing now is like what we're calling a backsliding, backlash, coordinated attack. So it's really interesting to think about like where have we made progress and where have we not at all made progress, and did that moment pass us by? And if we're truly committed to sustainable impact, we have to remember we have to truly solve for the most marginalized communities. We have to be bold in our solutions, and we have to refuse to be swayed by the political winds and stay focused on our North Star goals.
Well, if I could just keep you all with me every day in my pocket, this would be awesome. But so with that, I just want to ask, and I'll just ask this question. I'll ask this question to Allison and to Debbie just quickly, because the last three questions I think are very invested. I mean, I think our audience would enjoy those. But what do you guys believe are current challenges, trends, or advances in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging space? Allison.
Debbie, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've mentioned a couple of them. I think that's very probably familiar to many of you. So I think the challenges are really clear. So coordinated attacks against DEIB, racial equity and justice. Quick sidebar, in our work focused on expanding access to computer science education. In certain states, you can't use the word equity. So how are you actually going to solve for closing equity gaps when you can't say equity or can't have equity in your plan or your strategy or tied to any resources? So some really like significant challenges that we're facing. Obviously, the highly visible overturning of affirmative action. Again, going back to like my own personal experience, we saw it did have a negative impact on Berkeley's African-American enrollment. So we understand we'll probably continue to see negative implications of that ruling. And then in the tech space, and I know Ousman probably sees this as well, like there have been not only the lawsuits against organizations who are focused on specific populations. So again, threading our experiences, like the ability for folks to be able to target underrepresented communities and support them in a variety of things, whether it's the inroads, internship opportunities, whether it's fellowships to attend grad school, that is a real significant challenge. And then what's less visible but equally concerning, there are some headlines out just this past week about the layoffs of DEI teams in particular. So again, after George Floyd's murder, we had like the hiring of lots of chief diversity officers and commitments to racial diversity. And now that's like, we're literally seeing those teams being laid off and the discontinuing of DEI focused programs. So I think in the tech space, we see this happening at a time where two things are true. One, we have not made meaningful progress on tech workforce diversity or on economic mobility associated with like the promise of tech. And two, it's also this really, really nascent moment with like with the proliferation of artificial intelligence that also says like we could potentially shake things up again. So we're at this like very interesting inflection point. And I think it requires like conversations like this, as well as ongoing deep commitments, again, to like stay focused on our North Star and not like be swayed with different political winds.
Plus one on that, all of that, Allison, thank you. So I think there's a growing awareness of DEIB in many sectors, and especially in higher education. So prior to working at my current job at City College, I worked on a program called Mellon Maze, which is based at the Social Science Research Council, at least part of it is. And this program, Mellon Maze, aims to diversify education by creating a pipeline for BIPOC students to become professors. So, and that program has been around for 25, 30 years or so. So in some ways, this is not a new issue, but at the same time, I think there are a lot of challenges for universities and organizations to go beyond paying just lip service and to think about structural changes that can actually lead to a systemic change. And this goes to what Regent Perez mentioned, that that it's sometimes either just performative gestures. And City College, the population prides itself on having this incredibly diverse student population. There's like over 90 foreign languages spoken on campus. And so there are a lot of companies that come to City College and CUNY excited by the prospect of hiring our students because it will help them diversify their ranks. But it's also important to recognize that these students have been impacted by systemic inequities throughout their lives in their K-12 education and beyond. And you know, a lot of them are working multiple jobs. They have like retail experience, but this may be the first time that they're working in professional or corporate environments. And so I think what part of what DEIB should involve is like recognizing and accommodating people who might not have benefited from these elite spaces, from white heteronormative spaces, and to broaden our definitions of success or leadership or potential, and think about a more, like, honestly think about a more inclusive space. And I mean, we also see from recent challenges to higher education that attacks on race and gender can occur at even the highest levels, in even the most elite spaces. And so I think that's a concern to also be thinking about. The conservative machine is very effective at dismantling DEIB efforts.
Thank you very much for responding. So my next question
Hey,
is,
can I get
oh,
a word in on text?
yes,
Because
I
I can't
knew
be the
it.
tech guy and not say anything
Yes,
about text.
go
Right?
ahead.
So I think points are taken, right? And I think that there absolutely has been a shift. And I think for me, I've also struggled with that question, having sat in and worked for social media companies, right? Where the promise has sometimes fallen short of what we thought it could be and how we continue to develop there. I think the work is still being done. And for me, that's why I've stayed on this side. One of the reasons I came to Microsoft is the ability to actually decrease the digital divide. One of the things that we're working on this side is the ability to basically give access to people who are underserved or unconnected. And we made a commitment in 2022 that by the end of 2025, we're going to connect 250 million people who are not connected, with 100 million of them being in Africa. Near and dear to my heart. I think if we start thinking about where this can take us, right? The one thing we can't do is the same mistakes that led us to where we are today, right? We can't afford to come back and start cutting people out of this next chapter, right? The mobile phones were able to help Africa jump and leapfrog and create opportunities that never would have existed with mobile money, for example, right? We have the opportunity again with things like AI to shape what's ahead. But that means that all of us have to be able to speak in there. That means that you can't forget people. And one of the things I loved about what the Regent said earlier, it takes an all of society approach, right? And I think that with DEIBJ, there's some letters that have seasons. And right now, D doesn't have a season. E doesn't have a season. But I think for me, B and I are always going to be evergreen, right? And how do we use D, B, and I to help really build that glue to bring pieces on? But just wanted to offer that take in terms of just where I see challenges and opportunities.
Thank you so much. You all have said so much that I would just love to comment on, but I cannot because I am a moderator. But I really appreciate that lens, because it is a challenging conversation to have. And I do appreciate Regent Perez saying earlier that it's inclusive of all people. And I think people oftentimes have a hard time seeing how they fit into the all, especially with the unique history, specifically in the United States. So a question that was asked to Regent Perez, but I'll ask to all of you, what are ways that you want to engage with Berkeley, or you would like Berkeley to engage with all of you?
I can jump in.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think for me, Cal's always been at the front of defining this, right? From my first year in America in 1991, coming here and understanding what it meant to be included, what it meant to have a voice and to belong and to come to a place that always has stood for that. I think that does not disappear. And I think now more than ever, we need those voices, right? We need people to be out there doing the honest conversation, doing the hard conversation, and being radical in certain ways. but also being subtle in certain ways. I'll give you an example. So my father-in-law and I could not be more different people, right? When he first found out that I'm sure that I was dating his daughter, he fell off his chair. But over the years and 3 kids later, right, we've learned to have hard conversations where we don't agree at all. We come from very different political perspectives, very different life perspectives, but we can sit and listen and hear each other. And I learned that at Cal. I learned about the ability to sit in front of people who I disagree with vehemently, but still allow grace, compassion, and respect to flow from disagreement and be able to sit with disagreement. And I think there's a huge opportunity for Cal, huge opportunity for alumni from Cal to continue representing and shining that light in a world that frankly needs it more than ever.
Debbie, would you like to respond next?
I don't know how I can follow Ousman, but you know, I mean, I think I'm so inspired by Berkeley still in my time there, which was many years because I was in a PhD program. So I'm constantly thinking of ways to bring some of that ethos of the social justice spirit to the places where I am, including at City College now. But more in the short term, I think in my current role, I'm always looking for partnerships that will enable us to develop more fellowships and internships and opportunities for our students. And you know, that's what drew me to Berkeley, the legacy of working towards social change. And so if there are alumni or programs that want to collaborate with our students, I'm always eager to talk and brainstorm and think of ways in which we can develop more opportunities.
And the only other thing that I can add, because I think you both covered it really, really well, definitely like plus 1,000 to having Berkeley continue to lead in this space, as we always have. And I think what I would love to see, and maybe this, I'm not sure if this is like, Ousman, if this is this direct or is this subversive? I don't know. But I think I would love to see threads of this work. So, you know, there's the big picture, you know, what does the chancellor say? And then there's threads that happen, you know, in lecture series and different like new types of curriculum that are really like exposing young people to a different way of thinking about the world. And I think that's just critically important. So we work a little bit we worked with the School of Education in the past on like some new models for computer science teacher training. Sounds good. Yep. CS teacher training. Okay. But what are the ways that we're preparing computer science teachers to think about how to engage people from all backgrounds? So that's like an example that I think could go throughout all of our programs at Berkeley. And then I know there's some great stuff happening in the School of Computing and Data Science. But I would love to see how Berkeley can do more and be in more of a leadership role as it relates to diversity in computing specifically, knowing we have such a strong department. And there's such a strong tie to the companies that Ousman works with. And if we can build that pipeline, that would be, you know, a pipeline again with folks who are thinking about social justice issues, thinking about society, thinking about our globe in a different perspective. I think that would be my ask for Berkeley.
Thank you all. I had a question, but the question that came up in the chat is what I want to follow up on. Something, Ousman, you said it earlier, and I feel like it's really important, and we all probably have heavily benefited from this as people of color. Mentors versus sponsors. How do you get someone to be a sponsor for you? Or have you seen people just be willing to be bold about it? Like, because I have had sponsors as well, and most of my sponsors have been bold people. But I'm just curious for all three of you, when people put your name in that room and you weren't present, what did that look like for you?
I can go unless you ladies want to go first. Yeah. I think it wasn't real to me until I was bold, right? So for me, it was stepping outside of my comfort zone. And my first sponsor was actually a fluke. I ended up agreeing to moderate an ERG group at LinkedIn. And my sponsor was just one of my favorite people of all time. She had an incredible background, worked for the vice president, worked for the president, came into tech. And I said, yeah, I'll moderate this session with 24 hours of notice, knowing nothing about this person. And it took some courage to show up. And she did not want to talk about any of her accomplishments. So for the course of an hour, I dug and I dug and I dug. That conversation then turned into, what do you want to do, Ousman? And I said, look, I want to bridge tech in Africa. How can I do that? From that moment onward, every opportunity she saw for speaking engagement for me, I did. And every opportunity she saw to spread my name, I did. And that's what led me to go from commercial sales to public policy to global crisis management to where I am today. I think there's no linear path, but I would say be bold, number one, to be intentional. Sponsors sometimes need work. Sometimes you need to ask the question, and you need to ask someone that you're not comfortable, someone who can see the forest from the trees. So I would say that would be the first step. But the very first step, I think, is just be bold in terms of going out and looking for a person.
But Allison or Debbie like to go next.
I can go next. I mean, I would agree with everything that Ousman said. I've been fortunate to have a few really amazing sponsors in my life and in, you know, helping me along with my career and my professional and personal development. And now as I am a mentor to students, I try to encourage them to, you know, look for mentors and sponsors, but it can be really, really challenging. It's especially if you're the first in your family to, you know, go to college, have a professional career. It's daunting. And so I guess I encourage them to, you know, develop relationships and see and put themselves out there to some extent. But it's also about seeing, you know, trying not to force it too much and seeing which relationships click, which people are really there for you. And there are going to be people there for you. And at the Colin Powell School, we try to be extremely student focused. So I think some of us can maybe serve in these roles, but yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm still learning, honestly, and while also trying to impart it on some younger folk.
The only other thing that I would add to is just again, having benefited from a lot of folks who have done similar things to what Ousman said, literally like sent me here, apply to this research grant. I will, you know, review your application. Like that takes it, that's another level for me than like a mentor who's like, you know, just let me generally check in on you. And so I think that's one thing that I try to translate into my role as well. Like just have super clarity with every person that I work with. What are your goals? Like, what do you want? What do you actually want to do? Like, I know you're in this position, but while you're in this position, I can actually help you think about what the next position is. And I think that is a responsibility that a lot of us in professional spaces like should take on.
Thank you all. There was somebody asked a question, what's the importance of having a sponsor? And my experiences in kind of what Ousman, Allison, and Debbie shared, as a sponsor is a person who speaks of you in wonderful ways when you are not present in the room. Gives you opportunities for things that you weren't even thinking about. For example, Kathy, I would consider Kathy a sponsor for me because Kathy came out of nowhere and said, would you moderate this panel? And I was like, of course I will. So, but they're wonderful folks. They can be mentors who turn into sponsors, but oftentimes they are I have found there are people who have a specific positionality and power in some instances to be able to place you in places that mentors often cannot or don't have access to. So I did answer that in the chat. And so I want to finish with my final question, which I think is my favorite question of tonight, even though I've enjoyed everything. Looking back, what would the Berkeley student version of you be proud of? And we'll start with Debbie.
You know, so although I couldn't articulate this at the time, the job that I have now is exactly what I wanted to do when I was at Berkeley. So I wanted to work with students, especially this type of the population of students that I'm working with now, who are where you can see the impact of your work, and you can provide them with so many different opportunities. So I wanted to work with students. I wanted to teach a class on inequality, which I do. I wanted to work on pressing issues, I guess indirectly, because really my students are doing the work, but that's even better. And so, yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I'm super grateful to all of my professors and my friends and to Berkeley as an institution for helping me grow professionally and personally, and really to helping me develop a critical eye. I came in as an engineer and I left as a social scientist, which is kind of weird, but I think I developed this social justice mindset at Berkeley, and that is, I knew I wanted to work on systemic change, but Berkeley allowed me to do it.
Debbie, you said that way better than I could say, but totally agree. Like I wouldn't have been able to articulate that this was the career that I wanted or even knew existed. Very, very grateful to all of my mentors and sponsors and advisors and friends made along the way. And I think maybe most proud that, and again, upon reflection, like maybe this is something that is either intentional or built into the ethos of Berkeley, which is to kind of chart your own path. Because I remember at some points in time, it was, okay, you're getting a PhD, so you're going to go be a faculty, then maybe in a couple of years, you'll get tenure. Then after that, maybe you'll think about administration. And that wasn't my goal wasn't to, I absolutely adore every faculty member I had a chance to work with, but that wasn't my goal. My goal was to like work on problems and try to address them directly in addition to doing research. And so I wasn't sure that there was actually a path for that. I kind of stepped out after grad school and said, let me just figure this job market out, by the way, in 2009. So that was not a great time. But yeah, just really, really grateful I've had the opportunity to kind of chart my own path in this space and remain like deeply, deeply focused and committed to racial equity.
I love that. And I think that charting your own path and being who you are and being true to yourself is something that I also really took away from Cal. I've taken risks that people were like, what are you doing in your career, right? But I knew that I had to stay true to who I was. Sometimes it panned out, and I think sometimes we don't talk enough about the failures, but the failures to me are just lessons to learn deeper who you actually are and to be able to grow. And I think that Cal did that for me many, many times. I learned a lot of lessons from being at Cal, whether I succeeded or whether I didn't. And they stuck with me for a long, long time to go. I think the other thing that Cal also taught me was the ability to give back and the importance of giving back, where there was volunteering towards my senior year in West Oakland and seeing kids who didn't have the opportunities and making sure that I could model, right? I think one of the questions I saw in the chat, Ché, that you answered was really around what can we do around the dismal number of African Americans at Cal? I think there's a call to action there, right? We can mentor, we can show up, right? We can be the example, we can be the light that's out there. There's a lot of work to be done, but that doesn't stop any and each of us from being able to do that work. And I think Cal, with the ability to treat you like one of 22,000 students, definitely helped me see that that was always going to be a possibility.
Thank you so much for each of you for being with us this evening, answering our questions and giving us some wonderful, wonderful insights and fruitful thoughts to carry with us as we move forward. Do I need to turn it back over to you, Kathy?
Hi, Ché. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm coming in. Thank you, Ché and Allison and
Thanks,
Debbie
Debbie.
and Ousman. We are so grateful for all that you have done tonight and for, just for everything. So thank you so much. I have a few closing remarks. So let me get my screen going. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Joanna Aguirre, she, her. I'm the Senior Program Operating Officer at the Cal Alumni Association, and I'm grateful to be in community with you all. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our inspirational alumni speakers. I am truly honored to be part of this program, and I'm so thankful and grateful for all the time and energy that our alumni took to be here tonight. Thank you so much. The Cal Alumni Association has always existed with one purpose: to serve our Berkeley community. The first University of California graduates created the Alumni Association in 1872 to ensure that future students would never be without community after Cal. Over the 150 years that we have existed, we have offered programs to connect, engage, and inspire alumni to remain connected to UC Berkeley for life. We strive to create an inclusive, vibrant community where alumni worldwide can enjoy lifelong relationships with the university. The Cal Alumni Association is an independent, nonprofit membership organization. We have over 60 affinity, cultural, and US-based regional alumni chapter networks. We have many ways for alumni to stay involved after their time at Berkeley. We publish California Magazine, an award-winning and editorially independent publication sharing stories about the world of Berkeley and Berkeley in the world. Cal Discoveries Travel is a global educational alumni travel program. The Lair of the Bear is an outdoor camp and retreat center in Pinecrest, California. We offer a robust range of undergraduate alumni volunteer opportunities to support through scholarships and student programming for the Achievement Award Program, or TAP, the Leadership Award, African American Initiative Scholarship, the Mildred Jordan Sharp Scholarship, the Cal Pride Scholarship, as well as the Native American Scholarship, as well as the Cal Alumni Mentors Program, connecting alumni and students from first-generation, low-income, and historically underserved and underrepresented communities at Cal. As you've heard today, the Cal Alumni Association is committed to ensuring a Cal for all. And this event celebrates and recognizes the work being done by alumni in our community and on the Berkeley campus and through our alumni chapters. We hope that those in attendance today will leave with more information about what others are doing and how you yourself can be involved. As an organization, we are building on our progress of integrating more than just the letters DEIBJ. We strive to include diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice values into all our business practices and programming. Today's conversations reflect our commitment to ensuring that all Cal alumni feel welcomed and a sense of belonging. As the Cal Alumni Association's mission and renewed vision statement demonstrate, our continued commitment to our unparalleled alumni community. We celebrate lifelong, multifaceted relationships between alumni and our university. Relationships which encompass learning, achievement, advocacy, service, philanthropy, and so much more. By cultivating meaningful and inclusive experiences for our alumni, we can contribute to an alumni culture that celebrates its diversity, creates belonging, and advances equity at UC Berkeley. I want to thank Kathy Hahn, Regent Perez, Ché Abram, and our panelists for your partnership on this event. I'm grateful for your time and dedication to UC Berkeley and the Cal alumni community. Please join us at our next Cal for All event on March 7th, where we will hear from UC Berkeley's Vice Chancellor and Chief Diversity Officer, Dania Matos, and a panel discussion with Diego Giacome, our co-chair of the UC Berkeley Chicanx Latinx Alumni Association, Los Angeles chapter. Please take the time to complete the post-event survey that will pop up when the event ends and will also be sent via email. We welcome your feedback so we can continue to make improvements. Thank you for joining us tonight. Fiat Lux and Go Bears.